Stem cells and subsequent services have been on the rise since the late 1900s, and for a good reason. As a whole group, we think stem cells are important because thousands of studies have shown stem cells as effective through medicine and therapies. However, regulation and restrictions is necessary. This transitions us into our first point. Trials showed vision, heart function improvement, and healthy tissue growth, which shows clear proof of biological repair in stem cells. Results published by peer reviews confirms consistent improvement across multiple studies according to stem cell therapy and research. New delivery methods and precision techniques reduce risks such as immune rejection or abnormal cell growth. A UC Davis study shows improved vision in patients with retinitis pigmentosus, which is an eye disease that causes the retina to turn black, and stem cell therapies have cured that. Improved heart function and reduced major cardiac events. And this is a research in stem cell therapy and research. This shows that stem cells have helped people with cardiac and saved lives through many heart functions and cardiac events.
Okay.
This is the middle one?
No, the side.
Right.
Sorry. Okay, now let's talk economics. First, why economics? Economics drives motivation. Without a money incentive, there'd be no continued research. So, we're going to answer the question, is it economically viable? My answer, yes, for two major reasons. First, stem cells are an economic engine. They've been an increasingly large sector of the global GDP. And let's look at two examples. So, in New Jersey, there's a $720 million investment, which generated around $550 million of GDP for that state, around 8,000 jobs, around $500 million of income, and $40 million of taxes, so a huge return on investment. A similar example can be found in the state of California. Their investment, which was quite larger, resulted in 56,000 jobs and $10 billion to the state's economy. This graph is a projection of the stem cell therapy market size up to the year 2033, and you can see how there's only exponential growth projected for stem cells. The second reason is increased affordability. So the average cost of a major stem cell therapy procedure in the year 2003 would be around $150,000. If you compare that to the year 2015, it would be only $70,000. So as you can see, there's been a major trend of a depreciation of cost in stem cell therapies, which makes it more available to a wider range of people. This will naturally reduce social economic disparity of access to these therapies, which is important because that makes it more economically viable as more people can economically access the therapies. So now let's turn over to politics.
So currently, the thousands of reports of clinics authorizing unapproved therapies, combined with conflicting federal and state policies, have caused thousands of treatment-related complications and heightened public skepticism towards the healthcare system. To protect patients and ensure credibility, regulatory reform is essential. In 2015, a Florida woman reported losing complete eyesight shortly after receiving a stem cell treatment for macular degeneration. Her ophthalmologist, who later saw her, found pieces of blood floating in her eye, which prompted the FDA to investigate and later win a lawsuit prohibiting any marketing of non-FDA approved medical products. Stem cell therapies are frequently viewed as medical practices rather than products, as they often involve patient-related and patient-provided cells and human biomaterial. This is notable because the FDA regulates prescription medical products, while states regulate medical practices. With states being less medically specialized, these therapies are more prone to misregulation, leading to the FDA to tighten its framework in 2017. Although there has been tightened restrictions through the FDA, a 2021 study reported that the number of reported clinics authorizing unapproved stem cell products rose by nearly 500%, from 570 to 2,754 in just 5 years, and today that number has risen to over 10,000. So through this, we can see how there is needed a balance of federal and state regulation, and a clear example of this, as mentioned by John, in California is the California Institute for Regenerative Medicine. Proposition 71, passed in 2001, I believe, allowed for federal support of stem cell medical research. In 2017, it was redefined through Proposition 14, which granted the CIRM, California's medical institution, $5 billion to extend its research for the next decade, and which has proven very successful, as shown by John's reports. And so through the FDA, the FTC, which regulates non-prescription medical products, and effective state policy, proper regulation of stem cell therapies can be achieved. Additionally, with public and systemic reporting of all malpractice and false advertising, the public can be assured as to what is safe, effective, and credible in regards to stem cell research.
So now we'll move on to the environmental viability. So currently stem cell therapy requires production, of course. However, this creates a lot of problems, especially through plastic waste, which comes in the form of petri dishes, abused petri dishes, liquid waste through the use of growth media, and energy waste, which is self-explanatory. And so, because of all this this waste created by the biotech industry, created by the production of stem cells, there is a very big need for reform in the industry. So I got a couple of ideas here. Notably, switching from traditional media to more efficient types of media, switching from flask-based cultures to bioreactor cultures, optimizing and upgrading HVAC systems, so heating, air conditioning, etc. And finally, switching to the usage of more compact, less wasteful petri dishes. So specifically, I'd like to look at the use of bioreactors to reduce waste. So this is a graph from a study done by Rooster Bio, which compares the percent decrease in environmental impact between through the use of bioreactors compared to flask-based cultures. So you'll see these numbers, and this means that, for example, there will be a 95% to 97% decrease through the use of bioreactors. Similarly, there will be a 47% to 89% decrease in liquid waste using bioreactors. However, it's not like stem cells are all evil towards the environment. There is actually a very big advantage to using them. So, prominent researchers like Octavio da Silva Nunes have found that animal muscle cells can actually be differentiated into edible meat. Now, this means that we can theoretically completely replace our current traditional industry of meat production. So, huge, massive, overgrazed pastures where cows or cattle, pigs, chickens are just packed into these tight spaces just to be slaughtered. And using stem cell therapies, we can essentially confine these this meat production to tall buildings, which are much more land effective, are much less wasteful, of course, than large pasture farming or large scale pasture farming. It will reduce runoff and overall decrease the energy waste put into this production. So in conclusion, we have to keep using stem cells, but we have to be mindful of the consequences while taking adequate action to limit the harm it creates. Now, some limitations of this idea, this conclusion, is that what types of consequences? So for example, I talk mainly about the production of stem cell therapies, but we didn't really go into the transportation, the retail of stem cell therapy, that sort of stuff. In addition, how much money is this going to take? We won't be able to do much regarding stem cell therapies if officials who are looking at stem cell therapies through Benz's political lens are skeptic about using their monetary resources to fund these research projects. So,
Okay. Connor, offer me one specific way your thinking changed as a result of learning about John's findings.
I think it changed because like I feel like to fund stem cell resources is gonna like cost more money. So like I think my perspective changed. Like, is this really gonna like help somebody? And like, are people gonna be able to afford it even if they're like if they don't have the money for stem cells? So I think my thinking changed through that.
John, reflecting on your colleagues' work, which one had the greatest impact on your overall understanding of the problem that your group identified?
I would honestly say Ben's work. I think particularly reading his paper, his discussion about unauthorized clinics and the challenges that those rise really made me think harder about stem cell therapies and how they're really applied in our society.
Okay, thank you. Ben, what is a way in which your team's resolution makes you think differently about your own individual work?
I mean, collectively as a team, it doesn't really differ from my lens in particular because I kind of came to the conclusion that it is effective, but there is a need for regulation, which is kind of what I highlight mostly.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thomas, if you had another team member, what other perspective or limitations could they have researched that would have made a useful contribution to your project?
I think definitely like a teammate that would go into the social ethical lens of stem cell therapies, because all of our lenses kind of circle around the bigger idea of ethics and how effective they would be for society. And so with having a lens that specializes in that, it could be useful in helping to define more what we mean by effectiveness.
Okay, thank you. Another round of applause for the team. Nice job, guys. Done good.